for it. For members attending remotely, note that by voting on any application that you are confirming that you were in attendance for the duration of and you heard and saw all relevant information in connection with the application you vote on. When invited to speak, please introduce yourself by name to the meeting. When finished, please put your audio to mute. For any member attending remotely, if you declare an interest in any item, please turn off your video and keep your audio on mute for the duration of the item. An addendum was emailed to all committee members at 5 p.m. today. There is also a hard copy on each desk in the chamber. Can all members attending remotely please confirm they received the addendum and that we have sufficient time, that you had sufficient time to review it? All happy? If referring to a specific report, page, slide, etc., mention and clearly reference the report page slide so that all members have a clear understanding of what is being discussed at all times. For members of the public that are exercising a right to speak by remote means, please ensure that you are able to hear and be heard by councillors, officers and any other requesting speaking rights on the particular application. If this isn't the case, you must advise the chair immediately. Please note that once your application has been decided, you will be removed from the meeting. If you wish to review the rest of the meeting, please join the live link. Can I remind the public and press that taking photographs of proceedings or the use of any other means to enable persons not present to see or hear any proceedings or make a contemporaneous oral report of any of the proceedings are all prohibited acts. Thank you, and we will now move to the first item on the agenda. Apologies. Any apologies? No. Declarations of interest, you can declare now or at any time during the meeting. Councillor McPeak. Sorry, Councillor McPeak.
There's two applications there that Mid Ulster District Council's involved with, and if I wish to declare an interest, and perhaps maybe we all should do so. I think it's item 5.2 and 5.7.
Everybody happy to declare an interest? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, members, you've received the addendum this evening. The first item on that, through the Chair's business, is a letter from the Department on transforming planning with the introduction of independent inspectors. So it's just really for you to note that they have appointed a list of independent inspectors who are going to conduct independent examinations of local development plan documents and conduct public local inquiries and hearings. And that will remain live until 2029, which will then be reviewed, as far as I understand, depending on the success. The second item on the agenda is a planning appeals decision that we just received there on Friday. So I'm delighted to say that we successfully defended an appeal for an off-site replacement just outside Balahi. And the Commissioner went into a 10-page report, which is extremely thorough and useful for officers in terms of the policy requirements for an off-site replacement. And the third item, which is not on your addendum, it was just to note that our new Mid Ulster planning validation checklist went live as of yesterday morning. We received an extraordinary amount of planning applications last week in advance of the checklist, so I'm hoping it will settle down this week, but it's good to know that we've got that introduced. And talking to the Chair earlier, he noted how we were able to successfully implement this with our independent planning portal and the ease of that, so that's good news to report. Thank you, Chair.
Everyone happy? Everyone happy? Okay, so we'll move on to receive planning applications. Item 5.1, a battery energy storage system at lands approximately 500 metres northeast of 32 Drumkey Road, Dungannon, and the recommendation is for an approval. We have also had a late objection on that one, and Phelim is going to present. Thank you, Phelim.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you say, this is an application for a battery energy storage system beside the Tandemore substation in the rural area south of Coal Island and east of Dungannon. Members will see from the report that assessment of the proposed scheme against the relevant and current planning policies has been undertaken, and the scheme is considered to meet the planning policies for this type of development. The main issue of contention with this scheme is an objection from Sony, the service operator for Northern Ireland, to the location of the proposed development. They have advised that they are planning to expand the existing substation into the area where this scheme is proposed, and have identified a number of issues of concern about the impacts of their proposals, on their proposals, and wider impacts for the network and climate policies if this is approved. The objections have been fully documented in the report, and members, you're advised that there's no current planning application under consideration, and no permission has been granted for Sony to expand the Tandemore substation. As the Chair has advised, a letter was received from Sony, and that was following the publication of the planning report and the planning agenda for this meeting. The letter is in the addendum, and members are advised that Sony maintains its objection to the proposal and asks that members are made aware of this. It refers to the objections submitted on the 1st of June 2023, 3rd of November 2025 and 1st of December 2025, and repeats claims that this proposal, if approved, would impede Sony's ability to plan the transmission system in an efficient, economic and coordinated manner, and would conflict with adopted and emerging planning policy. It further repeats claims that the proposal would, if approved, have wider strategic implications, including for regionally significant energy infrastructure and the energy transition. These matters have been raised and considered by officers and are all covered in the report before you. Chair and members' recommendation for this proposal remains to approve the development. Thank you. We have less to speak for, but only if we...
So are all members happy with the report that is before us? We have a recommendation for approval.
Chair.
Councillor Cuthbertson.
Yeah, Chair, just I'm reading in the letter just that we're got on our addendum there. Sony talks about emergency planning policy. I know we talked about possibly emergency planning at a previous one of these applications. And I don't think it was really clear what the emergency planning is. Is this emergency planning something that council will be involved in, or other blue light services, or what do they mean by this objection in relation to emergency planning?
Phelim.
Chair, I believe what we're looking at here is emerging planning policies as opposed to emergency planning. So that would be the draft plan strategy that we have for the Mid-Ulster District Council draft plan policy, and that has been assessed within the report. You will be aware that the draft plan policy is still in draft stage, and the policies that are emerging there cannot be giving any determining weight in determining planning applications at this time.
Sorry, Chair, I misread it there. I took a quick glance over before the meeting, and I read it as emergency planning. But I suppose in relation to emergency planning, is there an emergency planning policy around these electrical storage things, or is there not?
Thank you, Chair. We have we've consulted with the Fire and Rescue Service in consideration of the planning application, and they have had an instrumental part in the overall determination of the proposal. They have taken into account the types of batteries that are being proposed here, and that's one of the new parts of our planning policy in the SPPS that asks that we take account of what the composition of these batteries are. So that has been fully considered within the report, and the Fire and Rescue Service have been fully involved in the determination of the application.
I see a hand up there online. Councillor Malloy, you've been waiting for some time. If you'd like to contribute.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for having me in. I suppose I just joined out of curiosity, really, to see where this is going, and is it, you know, a dispute between the two kind of providers that are on that site? Sony is the interconnecting, you know, the lines on the battery storage, but there are a number of these storage facilities that are planned for the immediate area around us. So I'm just wondering what the impact would be, either on plans that are already passed and plans that may be coming in the future, because, you know, it's all right looking at one of these in isolation, but there's a proliferation of them within that immediate area of that substation. And if the substation is going to be expanded further, you know, is there potential even more battery storage units that could be approved? Because the one that is already in place has impacted the local community. There is low-level noise that isn't determined as a nuisance, but for those that can hear that low-level noise, it certainly is affecting their lives. And, you know, just wondering where that goes for future applications. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Malloy. I'll hand you over to Melvin.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair and Councillor. I suppose to give you some assurance around this, you're quite right. There are a number of applications starting to emerge in and around this location, and at least one approved to date so far. I suppose what we're looking at very carefully is and what we're really required to do with any application, I suppose, is look at the cumulative effects as they evolve over time. So the team will be starting to look at where these are now being proposed, what that impact is, if any, on landscape character, but also working very closely with the likes of Environmental Health Department on issues around noise and other concerns that local people may or may have not with these things. I suppose each is assessing its own merits, like anything else, but we're not blind to the fact that there are other applications that are obviously competing for quite an attractive location here for that potentially that very purpose. So hopefully that gives you some assurance that we're not looking at or setting aside any other issues because of the amount of these in the location. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So, members, you've heard the discussion. We have an approval on the floor. Proposed, Councillor Johnson. I'll second. That's been approved. Item 5.2. Wetland park to include pedestrian walkways, children's play equipment, bird hides, viewing structure, ponds, dog park, and all necessary ancillary development to support the wetlands park at Glenshane Road for Mid-Ulster District Council. Councillor McPeak.
I think this is a very welcome development for Magherafelt. It's second part of an extended award for, I think it's £10 million that is coming into the area. We've already spent a lot of it in the regeneration scheme in Magherafelt, the public realm. This is the second part, and there's indeed the third part of Magherafelt High School development. I'll complete the third part, so this is eagerly awaited, this wetlands park, and it'll be a great asset for Magherafelt and the surrounding district, so I'd happily propose, Chair.
Second, Chair.
Item 5.3. 6 dwellings and associated access, parking and site works northeast of 71 Killymoon Road, Cookstown for Mr. Gerard Morris, and the application is recommended for approval. Proposed Councillor Sean Clark.
Second, Chair.
Second, Councillor Johnson. Item 5.4, that's deferred, yeah. Yeah. Item 5.6, Sorry. Sorry, I would like to hand you over to Karen in relation to 5.5.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so 5.4 is deferred for an office meeting. Apologies, I didn't declare that at the start of the meeting tonight. And 5.5 has wrongly been placed on the agenda this evening. It has issued under the scheme of delegation as an approval. So apologies for that. Oh, we need a proposer and a seconder, sorry, for 5.4 for deferred for an office meeting.
Proposed Councillor McPeak. Sean?
Yep.
And seconded Councillor Clark. Dwelling in garage at land 78 Prince Carn Road. Is marked for Mr. Fergal Smith and is recommended for approval.
I propose to accept the recommendation.
Proposed Councillor Clark.
Second, Chair.
Second, Councillor Dunn. Item 5.7, removal of existing enclosed. Item 5.7, the removal of existing enclosed porch and steps, provision of a new covered ramp and stepped access, 22 Park Road, Dungannon for Mid-Ulster District Council. The recommendations are an approval. I'll approve. Propose. Sorry. Councillor Cuthbertson.
Yes, Chair, I suppose there was just to declare an interest in this one, but to approve it, it's much needed works just for the boxing club in Dungannon.
Thank you. Councillor Clark. Second, Councillor Clark. Item 6, received the deferred applications, and I'm going to hand you over to Karen in relation to 6.1 and 6.3. Thank you.
Yes, it's just to say that Colin is going to present 6.1 and 6.3 together. We don't normally do this, but we've had site visits with members to both sites. So I think it would be prudent for Colin to take both together. They both have the same issues. We'll have to make decisions on them individually, but that's the way we propose to take it forward.
Thank you. So item 6.1 is dwelling and garage at lands opposite 33 Lock Road, Balmagwigan for Martin Doyle, and item 6.3 is a dwelling and garage at 40 metres southwest of 11 Lock Road, Magherafelt for Mr. Peter Casty. And I'll hand you over to Collie.
Thanks, Chair. As Karen says, these two items are being presented to members jointly because the application sites are located side by side, and the reasons for which both applications are recommended for refusal are similar. Likewise, the cumulative impact of the proposed dwellings, if approved, is something that should be considered by members. Both applications were last presented to members in March 2026, where it was agreed to defer the applications for a member site visit, which has since taken place. In relation to CTY2A, which is the main consideration across both applications, that policy states that permission will be granted for a dwelling in a cluster where 6 criteria are met, and rather than repeating them, these are displayed on the screen for members to consider. On the second slide there, Sinead, just. No, they're not, sorry. If you go to 6.4, they're there. No, sorry, go back. Yeah, they are there. You go again. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the criteria for members to consider. Rather than me reading them out, you can peruse those at your own time there. It's the view of officers that there is a cluster of development at this location consisting of the wider trad nursery site, which acts as a focal point, as well as numbers 31, 33, 35, 35A, 35B, 37 and 39 Lock Road, and this is evidenced by the image on the screen where the cluster is identified in yellow. Planning permission granted in the past in the midst of the group of buildings proves that it has been accepted as a viable cluster in the past. However, it is clearly evident on the ground and indeed from maps that the cluster exists to the southern side of the road. Members can see from the policy wording that the policy exists to ensure that development is located in or rounds off an existing cluster and does not extend it. The two sites in question are not bounded on two sides by development in the cluster. Both sites are bounded on one side by development in the cluster, and that is on the southwestern boundary, where number 31 and 33 Lock Road are located. The other three boundaries are not bounded by development from within the cluster. The dwelling currently under construction to the north of the site is clearly removed from the cluster and cannot be considered as part of the cluster. This dwelling sits on its own, approximately 60 metres back off the road, and is not grouped with the existing cluster of development. Members should be aware that it is the recommendation of officers that development on this site would not represent a rounding off of the cluster, but would lead to the expansion of the cluster across Lock Road. It is also the view of officers that both sites would fail to integrate into the landscape due to landform and to the absence of long established boundaries around the site. The sites are roadside plots, and in relation to 6.1 that rises gently above the level of the road. There's little vegetation surrounding both sites, and they offer little in terms of integration and will rely on new landscaping for integration. Photos on the screen show both sites in their present state, in their state in March, and illustrate the difficulty which would exist in terms of integration. Given all of the above, members are recommended to refuse both applications for the reasons given in the deferred committee reports. Members should also be aware that both items require the submission of a biodiversity checklist. This has not been requested because applications were considered fundamentally contrary to policy. Therefore, should members overturn the decision, then a biodiversity checklist would be required to be submitted and consulted upon if necessary before any approval could be issued. Thank you.
Thank you. So, members, you've heard. Sorry. We have a speaker for both applications, Chris Cassidy, online. Chris, you have 6 minutes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members. These applications have now been before the committee on several occasions, and importantly, members have now visited the site. Following that site visit, it was recognised that number 31 Lock Road forms part of this existing cluster. This is a significant finding because it differs from the original officer's assessment and demonstrates that the site must be considered based on the actual relationship and the surrounding development. The officer accepts there's an existing cluster development, also accepts the Trad Nursery represents a focal point. Furthermore, two recent planning approvals under Policy 2A have already been granted on this same cluster. The only issue before members is where the cluster begins and ends. Following your site visit, members had the opportunity to assess the site on the ground rather than simply from plans. We respectfully submit that the existing dwelling immediately to the northeast, together with number 31 opposite, and the wider pattern of development demonstrates that this proposal forms part of the established roadside community rather than representing isolated development in the countryside. The report repeatedly states that a dwelling to the northeast should be ignored as it sits on its own. However, this is an approved dwelling. It exists within the same established pattern of development and clearly contributes to the character of Lock Road. We disagree that it can simply be discounted when considering enclosure and consolidation. Likewise, the proposal will not result in an acceptable build-up of development. Lock Road is short, dead-end road serving an established rural community. It is not a through route and carries very limited traffic. There is always a long established settlement within the strip here with strong links to the fishing community. Many of the original fishing families, including these applicants, continue to live and work within the locality and in the loch, which reinforces the established character and identity of this cluster. Both sites benefit from established roadside hedging. The proposal can integrate successfully into the landscape without significant reliance on new planting. Finally, the refusal reasons relating to biodiversity is not submitted by facts. The site is not located within the SSI. No hedging or mature trees are removed. The site is not within 50 metres woodland or a watercourse. These are single houses within existing clusters, and any ecology matters capable of requiring further assessment could be addressed through additional information. Members, you have visited the sites and are therefore best placed to assess its relationship with their surrounding development. We respectfully submit that the proposal represents appropriate consolidation of the established cluster, satisfies the objectives, and does not give rise to planning harm. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chris. Councillor Donald McPeak.
Thanks, Chair. I visited the site there back in March. I didn't even seen that long ago. And the 31 Lock Road, to me that very much looks that this was part of a cluster. And as the agent said there, the Lock Road, it doesn't go anywhere. Both applicants are local to that area. There's no objections. I think I would always have thought of that as a cluster, and when I went down there, and I hadn't been down that road in a while, I don't see what difference it would make for these two local people to get houses down and establish what I would consider a settlement down there. So that was my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councillor Sean McPeak.
Chair, similarly attended the site meeting, and as the map shows there, it's clearly a proliferation of houses there on both sides of the road, and there is an established cluster there. It has been recognised. I know we're talking about whether it's on one side of the road or the other, but to me it's the whole area as the cluster, and the house at the top, the northwest there, adds to it too. And I think it's a cluster all day, every day, and it's not going to make any difference in that road. It's a one-end road, and it's a local community. There's no objections as far as I'm aware of, and I think we should approve this application. I would propose that we do approve it on the basis that it is an established cluster.
So you're making that a proposal, Councillor Sean McPeak, and
Could I second that?
seconded by Donald McPeak. Planning manager wants to come in.
It's just being careful for the rationale, for the purpose of the minutes, on what both members have said. It can't be because it's the local community. It can't be because it's local people wanting to live in the area. It's when you look at the points on which it has been proposed, or sorry, recommended by officers as a refusal, and based on what you're saying at the moment is that you believe that that the dwelling to the northeast is part of the cluster based on your site visit that day, and because you believe that is part of the cluster, that you consider that the sites are bounded on two sides with development in the cluster. You disagree with the site having a lack of integration. You feel that the boundaries will enable a new dwelling on each site to satisfactorily integrate into the countryside at this location. You also consider that given the amount of development that's down there, that you don't think that this will further erode the rural character of the area. Is that a fair enough assessment?
Sorry, hold on, Councillor McPeak.
No, just in terms of the integration, I maybe didn't mention, but there is a spattering of mature trees in the vicinity there of one of those dwellings, and with them being established there, and indeed if there's additional planting to be required, we've done that in the past, to put that in as a condition to supplement what's already there. I have no issue with that being added as a condition.
Well, members, I guess we have a couple of options before we go with the final proposal and seconded. Colin has mentioned that we need the biodiversity checklist. So I guess what we would suggest is that you would be proposing to accept the principle of an approval based on tonight's discussion, but that officers would go back and ask for biodiversity checklists on both applications, and then bring it back before members for the final decision.
Happy? Everyone happy? Okay, so that has been
That's 6-1 and 6-2.
6-1 and 6-2 has been approved. Councillor Johnson?
No, I just want to say that I absolutely agree with Sean and Donnelly. I was at that site visit myself, and had they not proposed and seconded, I would have come in there and supported that. So, yeah.
Item 6.2, dwelling and apologies, Councillor Black.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to the site meeting, but I'm happy to take the lead from those that were, and I can understand the logic from looking at the images on the screen, so happy enough to support the proposal as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Black. So we'll move on to item 6.2. Dwelling and garage on a farm at 35 metres southeast of 37 Balnacross Road, Knocklochram for T. Elliott, and the recommendations for approval. Councillor McPeak.
Proposed, Chair.
Councillor McPeak.
Yeah.
Item 6.4, dwelling and garage on a farm at approximately 100 metres northeast of 10 Scribe Road, Balahi, for Mr. James McElwee, and it's recommended for refusal, and I'll hand you over to Collie.
Thanks, Chair. This application was presented to members in March 2025 and was deferred for an office meeting at that meeting. That meeting has taken place, and a further statement case was submitted by the agent in June of 2025, and the case is once again presented to members with a recommendation to refuse. The application is for a dwelling on a farm excuse me, and has been assessed against CTY 10 at PPS 21. CTY 10 requires that the farm business is active and established, and also that the proposed dwelling would be sited to visually link or cluster with a group of farm buildings. Both these things have been demonstrated to the satisfaction of officers, and the proposal complies with these elements of the policy. However, CTY 10 also requires that there shall have been no development opportunities sold off from the applicant's farm holding within 10 years of the date of the application. In relation to this, a site which was owned by the current applicant in this application, James McElwee, and approved under CTY 10, was sold off on the 18th of September 2018 for the sum of £60,000. This site is shown on the map highlighted in yellow, with the current application site outlined in red. The agent claims that the site was previously leased in Conacre from Mr. McElwee and not farmed by him, but it was still in his ownership and sold off only a few months before the reserve matter submission on the site was approved, and whilst the outline permission was obviously approved before that. This means that within 10 years of the date of this application, a site which had the benefit of planning permission has been sold off from land owned by James McElwee, and if this application were approved, a second grant of planning permission within 10 years of that sell-off would occur on land owned by James McElwee. For clarity, the timeline of events is laid out as follows and shown on the screen, and this is in relation to the yellow site. So on the 7th of September 2016, outline application was approved on that site. On the 19th of September 2018, it was sold off to Declan O'Reilly. A few weeks later, on the 9th of October 2018, the reserve matters was approved. And then in June 2024, the current application is received and made valid. So this is plainly contrary to CTY 10, and for this reason, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Collie. So we have two speakers, Chris Cassidy, agent, online, and Councillor Ian Milne online. Chris, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Members, the recommendation before you turns entirely on one issue, the interpretation of the word farm holding. The report asks you to refuse the application based solely on the case officer's opinion. No planning appeal commission decision is cited, no statutory definition is provided, and no planning policy or departmental guidance is produced to purchase or support that interpretation. PPS 21 does not state that the farm holding means every parcel of land legally owned by a person. In this case, the facts are clear. The land where the site was and where council considered to be sold by James was leased on a long-term basis to Declan O'Reilly. He operated a completely separate dairy farm business. The council accepted the farm business's meeting policy under CTY 10 and granted permission to Declan for a farm dwelling for his own business a number of years ago. The council is now asking you to accept the opposite position, that the very same land remained part of Jane McElwee's farm holding all along. These two positions cannot be correct. Members may also wish to consider the ordinary meaning of the term farm holding. Standard dictionary definitions describe the farm holding as land that is occupied and farmed as a single agricultural unit, rather than simply every parcel of land under the legal ownership of one individual. This reflects long-established agricultural practice throughout Northern Ireland, where a farm holding may comprise land that is owned, leased, rented or occupied under other agricultural arrangements, provided it is managed as one farming enterprise. The ordinary meaning of the term therefore relates to an agricultural unit that has been operated not solely to legal title. If the council's interpretation is accepted, it would have far-reaching consequences for farming across Northern Ireland, where leased land and separate dairy farm businesses are common. There is nothing in PPS 21 to suggest this was ever intended. Members should therefore ask themselves 4 simple questions. What planning policy, PAC decisions or justifications supports the interpretation adopted in this report? If the previous dwelling was justified under Declan O'Reilly's separate farm business, why should the development opportunity now count against James? Where does policy CTY 10 say that a farm holding is determined solely by legal ownership? Does refusing this application generally achieve the purposes of policy, or does it extend the policy beyond its wording? The evidence submitted demonstrates that the land previously transformed had formed part of Declan O'Reilly's agricultural enterprise under a bona fide leasing arrangement and should not properly be regarded as a development opportunity sold from James McElwee's farm holding. The refusal recommendation is therefore founded upon an interpretation of policy that goes beyond both the wording of PPS 21 and established PAC decisions. Accordingly, members are respectfully invited to depart from the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And we have another speaker for the application, Councillor Ian Milne. Ian, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, and I'm one to speak in support of the application. I have lived and worked in the area all my life, and I have personal knowledge of both James McElwee and Declan O'Reilly and their respective farming businesses. From my own local knowledge, these have always operated as separate farms with separate farming activities. Despite the land ownership arrangement between them, it has always been understood within the local farming community that Declan farmed his own agricultural enterprise independently of James, and that each operated as a distinct farming business. Throughout my time as a local councillor, I have visited both farms on numerous occasions and have seen firsthand that they are operated as separate agricultural enterprises. Based on my knowledge and experience, I have no doubt that they are distinct farming businesses. I fully support James McElwee's effort to secure planning permission for a dwelling to serve his own active and established farm business, and believe his application should be assessed on its own merits in accordance with planning policy. And thank you very much, Chair and Planning Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. And Karen?
Thank you, Chair. We've heard a lot this evening, members, and we were provided with a rebuttal of the case officer report by Chris Cassidy as part of the request to speak here this evening. One thing I want to say, planning policy is always interpretation. That's why we're always here. I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's never black and white, very rarely. It is always down to interpretation, and what you have before you in the case officer report is a professional, not personal opinion on what that interpretation of the policy is. There's no insinuations or anything, and to say that it's a personal opinion is unacceptable. Chris has referenced that there are no PAC decisions or legal judgments. A search through the PAC database, I found in a short space of time a couple of decisions where they do distinctly make separate references to farm business and farm holdings. And it is clear, Chris has asked, one of the 4 questions he has asked is, you've got to ask yourselves, does this recommendation achieve the purpose of policy? Well, I say it does. This is my advice to you this evening. I mean, we'll have the discussion, but paragraph 5.40 of PPS 21, planning permission will not be granted for a dwelling under this policy where a rural business is artificially divided solely for the purpose of attaining planning permission or has recently sold off a development opportunity from the farm, such as a replacement dwelling or other building capable of conversion. So sold off a development opportunity from the farm. For the purpose of this policy, sold off will mean any development opportunity disposed of from the farm holding to any other person, including a family member. From the planning history, it's obvious that the land that was owned by Mr. McElwee, some of it leased out to Mr. O'Reilly, but the land was owned by him, but 2 farm businesses were operating at that time. That is the basis on which planning permission was granted. It was argued at that time that Mr. O'Reilly had buildings that were visually linked with the site that he got approval for, and that when he signed the correct certificate, which he didn't initially, he claimed he owned the land at the start. He didn't, and that was confirmed when Certificate C was signed. So the land that was owned by Mr. McElwee at that time got planning permission. Mr. McElwee, it is clear from the land registry documents, sold that site then to Mr. O'Reilly. Mr. O'Reilly got planning permission for a shed to the rear of that site that's outlined in yellow there in the map before you. It's my understanding that shed has never been built. It's as far as I know, still leased by him, because we were told back in the day that it was a 40-year lease when we asked for further documents. So more than one business can operate on a farm holding. And the purpose of 5.40, when Chris is asking the question about achieving the purpose, is to stop artificially dividing up farmlands to get more than one planning permission. I do believe that the PAC has distinguished between farm business and farm holding. Again, it's down to interpretation, yes, but that's for members to have a discussion about this evening.
Thank you, Karen. So, members, you've heard the discussion. Well, what I would say is that it's not straightforward. There would be quite a degree of ambiguity in that, and perhaps we would maybe need to take it away and get some legal clarity on that.
I think you can have the debate this evening as to whether what do you interpret to be a farm business and a farm holding. I mean, a good way to get an absolute definition of it would be accept the recommendation to refuse. Let's get it tested by the PAC. If we've interpreted it wrongly, if the PAC decide to dismiss the appeal, then we won't be taking recommendations back again like this, because they will have given us a clear steer and a clear direction. If Chris believes that hasn't happened already, I do believe they have given different weight to business and holdings. But it's down to interpretation, and members can give their interpretation this evening for direction.
Thank you. Councillor Sean McPeak.
Chair, like yourself, I find it hard to follow, to be fair, but I find it rather confusing. I would just like in the officer's report for it to be stated, previously where PAC or the some other ruling had contradicted what the applicant's saying here, you know, and I don't see that clearly in it. And I do take what Chris Casty said about this site, the previous site for Mr. O'Reilly, you know, was claimed under, if it was claimed under his business ID, well, surely, you know, that's not been asked here for now. It's Mr. McElwee's business ID that's been utilised now. So I just find it very confusing, and if there's some way of getting sort of some form of legal clarity around it, I think it would be, I just think it would be harsh, unfair to refuse this application just based on the legal greyness that I see anyway, because I do see an applicant that applied a number of years ago getting a site passed, albeit on the same holding, but it was under a different business ID number, and I'm just confused.
Okay, Karen, would you like back in?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't, and it may always be confusing until we get some kind of steer on it, but it's taking it back to the basics, really. It's planning permission was granted on land owned by Mr. McElwee in 2018. Yes, he wasn't the applicant. Yes, he leased the land as part of his farm business, but that land was still on his holding. He held that land. He let it out, but he held it as ownership. And following the granting of planning permission, Mr. O'Reilly, according to land registry documents, paid a sum of £60,000 for that one field back in 2018. I don't believe, I sold it. I mean, it was sold to Mr. O'Reilly, and I don't believe that was agricultural prices at that time. I mean, 2018 for £60,000 for 3 acres, that's assumptions, I appreciate that, but the fact is, it was on Mr. McElwee's land. Mr. McElwee sold it. A period of time has now passed, and now Mr. McElwee is wanting different planning permission, still on land that he owns on his holding. And I take what you're saying. I mean, sometimes we try to confuse situations by trying to get different distinctions, but I think if you can take it back to basics, that's where it's at. We don't like to refuse planning permission, I get that, but by doing this, by accepting that this is an artificial division, which is contrary to policy, if we don't do that, it will open the floodgates for all the farms. That's the difficulty. I mean, we know how many farms we have in terms of a farmer possibly being elderly or older and doesn't want to sell the land, but maybe wants to lease some of it out to get an income, to get the land to be kept in good condition for the benefit of others. But then if that relationship changes and the land stops being leased, it's where does that end? I do think it would be and I know that's not the purposes of why we're here as a committee, we're here to make decisions, but I do think it would give us a very good steer if we accepted this recommendation. And as I say, if it's allowed, we'll hold our hands up and say, that's not the steer we're going to take anymore with the committee. These types of applications will not be back before you again, because we'll have accepted the recommendation from the PAC or the decision. But if it's upheld, it supports what we're trying to make as a recommendation as officers before you this evening. Maybe Catherine wants to come in terms of a legal steer.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I was going to go along the same lines as Karen, that if you take this back to absolute basics, it was land sold with the benefit of an outline planning permission on it. And we can't comment on whether or not the price reflected that or not, but it does appear that at that time, a holding, this land was sold from this man's ownership, and he was noted on the application, from what Karen says, as the landowner. But the other thing is, the only way we are going to get clarity on this, Colin is obviously, the planning officer has provided his interpretation, is, as Karen says, to allow the process to run its course here, and if it's appealed, the Planning Appeals Commission will guide, or alternatively to look at previous Planning Appeals Commission cases, if there are any, which may assess officers, or it may help them I suppose, provide further clarity on why they've made the decision or the recommendation in this case. So those are the two, I suppose, options, Karen. Perhaps if you have looked at PSA guidance on this, you might be able to provide further clarity on that.
Yeah, and in the mountain of paperwork, I might not find them now. I had them on my hand 2 minutes ago. There were two decisions, one in Randallstown, Creggan just outside Randallstown, and one down Newry and Mourne direction. The one in Creggan outside Randallstown is 2022/A0082. So it refers at paragraph 7, where a rural business has recently sold off a development opportunity from the farm, such as a replacement dwelling, but it's a development opportunity, which is what this is. For the purposes of this policy, sold off will mean any development opportunity disposed of from the farm holding to any other person, including a member of the family. So we are saying that this holding, that James McElwee owned the 3 fields at that time that Mr. O'Reilly leased from him, and the sell-off happened post-approval in 2018. The sell-off happened in 2018. The plan permission was granted, I believe, in 2016. It says then, in paragraph 9, the completion of a P1 form by different parties establishes that the land has been disposed of for the purposes of policy CTY 10. So that's that one. And there's another one, 2021/A0028, and that's just outside Newry. They talk about farm business have been active, no dwellings or development opportunities have been sold off from the farm holding within 10 years of the date. Again, sold off will mean any development opportunity disposed of from the farm holding to any other person. So the two businesses, I mean, if it was post 10 years, it'd be easier, but the two businesses, one had a DARA number, one didn't. Mr. O'Reilly didn't. He was able to prove through time with invoices and leases that he was active. And again, it just repeats no dwellings or development opportunity. The policy test is therefore there's no dwellings or development opportunities either sold off or transferred from the farm holding to any other person, including a family member. So I do believe they give some distinction in terms of that when you think of the basics of this case.
Councillor Sean Clark.
You're all right now?
It's okay, right, I'm back in. Thanks, Chair. There's actually 2 dates that I'm interested in. The plan approval, original plan approval, 2016, and the date of transfer, whatever, 2018. Is the 2018 date the relevant date or 2016? Right, so that's right. Well then, after, 2018, after 2028, then that 10 years going, and then possibility, right, okay, that's impressive. So it's 2016 for the approval, but it's 2018, right.
Councillor Cuthbertson, you've been waiting there with your hand up online. Go ahead.
I have, sure. Yes, I just want to propose the recommendation to refuse.
Proposed by Councillor Cuthbertson to refuse. Councillor Meader Graham, you had your hand up there a moment ago.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to ask the same question that Councillor Clark had asked about the dates. Just to clarify, if the applicant waits another 2 years, then he can apply again, and we wouldn't be sitting here going through all this. it would be straightforward because he would have waited the 10 years. Am I right in saying that, Karen?
Karen?
Yes, Councillor Graham, that's all things being equal to the situation being the same as today, that he is an active farmer in 2028 and been able to satisfy A and C still at that time, because we don't have any objections to those at this point. But yes, the critical date, because it does say in the policy, no dwellings or development opportunities out with the settlement limits have been sold off from the farm holding within 10 years of the date of the application. So that is the planning application here is 2024, which would only have been 6 years that had passed from the 2018 sell-off. So we would be looking at the date of 2028, yes.
Well, based on that, I'll second Councillor Cuthbertson's proposal to accept the proposal. The officer's recommendation is what I mean, yes.
So we have a proposal to accept by Councillor Cuthbertson and a second by Councillor Maida Graham to refuse. Okay, that's refused. Item 6.5, dwelling in garage opposite 32 Rahahi Road, Auchnacloy, for Mr. James McGowan, and the recommendations for refusal, and Colley to present.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This application was presented to members in April 2025 with a recommendation to refuse, or was deferred for an office meeting which took place in July 25. Following reconsideration of the application, it is again presented to members with a recommendation to refuse. Members will be aware, after earlier discussion, the policy CTY2A PPS 21 is the policy context when assessing applications, and it states that permission will be granted, as we've seen earlier on, for in a range of criteria where there's a cluster of development. A prerequisite for this kind of application before the criteria is the existence of a cluster of development, and in this instance it is the view of officers that a cluster of development does exist and consists of 8 dwellings. The cluster is marked indicatively on the map shown for members on screen, and the yellow highlighting is took away the outprint of the houses, but there are buildings there. There are other dwellings in the vicinity and around the vicinity, but the extent of the cluster is considered to be confined to the boundary as shown on the screen. Having established the existence of a cluster, therefore, it is essential that the application site then meets all the criteria in order to be considered as capable of complying with policy CTY2A, and those criteria are again displayed on the screen. The cluster consists of 8 houses and is a visual entity in the landscape located at a crossroads where the Glencrew Road and the Carnteel Roads intersect the Rahahi Road. First three criteria are therefore satisfied. The site is only bounded by development within that cluster on one of its boundaries. The northern boundary of the application site is bounded by number 32 Rahahi Road, which is shown as a black dot there, but there is a large house there. The eastern boundary of the site is not bounded by any development. The western boundary of the site is bounded by a laneway leading to a dwelling located approximately 300 metres to the south and not part of the cluster. On the other side of this laneway is a field which separates the site and the laneway from number 44C Glencrew Road, and this separation is shown in the photo on slide 2. So that's on your right hand side of that photograph is the back of the houses in the cluster. On the left hand side there's a laneway. Past that laneway is our site. So that is the separation plus the laneway from the houses in the cluster. So there's no development bounding the site on the southern boundary, and there is therefore only development from within the cluster bounding the site on the northern boundary, and this is contrary to policy CTY2A, which states that the site must be bounded on at least 2 sides by development within the cluster. The cluster is mostly linear in nature, running from north to south, with a protrusion to the northwest in the form of number 32, and given this, I feel that a dwelling on this site would represent a rounding off, and that it would not extend the cluster any further westwards than is already the case with number 32. There is no obvious incompatible land use which would cause any harm to residential amenity to the proposed development, nor would the proposal have any impact on residential amenity of existing dwellings. An objection was received in relation to the loss of privacy of number 32, but this was considered by the original case officer and found not to be worthy of refusal. So given the site is not bounded on 3 sides by development in the cluster, the proposal does not meet all the criteria of CTY 2A and is recommended for refusal on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Collie. Could you please bring up page 211 and 212 to make comparisons, please,
Just for the members.
for the members?
Sorry, page 211 and 212 of.
Just because members, as Colin referred to, the yellow wash on the PowerPoint doesn't show the other buildings that are on the ground. Shoneen doesn't have access to that to bring it up on the PowerPoint this evening, but if we keep that image up there, you see the red line of the application site on the yellow, beside the yellow wash, and then in the report before you that was sent around, pages 211 and 212, you could then cross-reference what the buildings that exist on the ground to establish if you think there's a cluster there. And we don't have any speaking requests on this one this evening. No. So it's for members to decide how they want to proceed on this.
Collie?
Yeah, just, I mean, apologies for that. I'm not sure. I looked at this today and I could see the footprints of the buildings under the yellow wash. I don't know, it's maybe something that's happened on the transfer to that screen through PowerPoint. I'm not sure about that, but there are buildings located in kind of the individual plots all within that kind of yellow cluster. So we do accept there is a cluster there.
So members, you've heard the report there. One thing that I would say is, I mean, earlier we have discussed in Ballymcguigan clusters, and I would see this as something similar. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I'm looking at this here, Chair. And outside the red line and between that site, there's something that looks very like a foundation.
Yeah.
A foundation, yeah.
Looks like hard stand.
Looks like a hard standing, you know.
Yeah.
It's in
And the
Google
Earth or whatever it is.
Exactly where Councillor Clark?
The west, that's probably east. Probably east of the red line. That bit that's given and somewhere else has been like showing a photograph of there it is, the rushes or whatever it is. Had to be further down there between the dwellings that's there on that particular site. What page is that on, I wonder? It looks very like a hard standing, you know.
outline we found.
Mm-hmm. It's, I don't know what page it is, where do we see? It's the one after
212.
212, is it?
If you blow up the picture,
212.
expand the picture and see.
Expand it, well even without expanding it you can see the hard, like a hard standing. And in fact, it's like it's
Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the picture there on page 211. And when you take a look at that there, and bear in mind what we have passed in Ballymcguigan earlier on, I think there's a very obvious cluster there when I look at it from this angle here. And I would be happy to propose that that is approved based on what we have done earlier on tonight.
I think I appreciate talking about what we've done earlier in each case that's on its own merit, so we would need to be looking through what our refusal reasons are for this evening. and that it's not bounded on two sides by other development in the cluster. So what Colin has told you is that there is a cluster, which is what he considers to be all that's included within that yellow wash, if that makes that easier. Apologies, it's a wee bit confusing going between two maps. There is then another dwelling to the east on the other side of the field boundary. What has been considered this evening is that dwelling is not forming part of the cluster, but what you would want to consider is that, do you consider on the merits of this case that that dwelling you consider could be part of the cluster that exists there? That you would then say that if that is the case, then it's not going to visually intrude into the open countryside. That would be the decision you would have to take this evening for the rationale for this, to have an overturn for an approval.
You're happy with that, Councillor Johnston? Yeah. So, Maida Graham? Councillor Maida Graham?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would second Councillor Johnston's proposal that it's overturned and accepted. Collie said himself, it would round off the cluster. So on that basis, could it not be accepted for approval? You have a dwelling on the other side of the laneway, on the other side of the field. You have a dwelling across the road. You have a dwelling down the lane, and you have another dwelling to the right-hand side, which isn't included as part of the cluster. So it is, to me, it seems like a rounding off, as Collie said, of the cluster. And on that basis, could it not be accepted for approval?
Based on the rationale that has been put before us, yes, I believe that could be taken. Councillor Mark Robinson.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I would tend to agree with what has been said there. To me, I know Councillor Clark raised it, there does look to be an area there to the right of number 44B that could be possibly outline plan permission or something, or a site started there maybe. So I would think it's rounded in three sides. If we take that house into the right-hand side and fills out the cluster, so I would be happy to go with the proposer and seconder to overturn this recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I believe that the conditions would need to be delegated to the officers in this one. So we have a proposal and a seconder to overturn. Everyone happy? Okay. Moves us on to item 7, draft regional report on the NI planning system. And I'll hand you over to Karen for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, members. You have the paper before you this evening, and just a really quick summary. We've received correspondence from the Chief Planner and Director within the Department for Infrastructure, and we are asking members if they want a workshop to be arranged before a report is presented to the Planning Committee in September. The rationale for that is that there have been discussions with the Strategic Planning Group and Planning Improvement Programme Project Board to have a collaborative regional report on the planning system in Northern Ireland. We've got support, or they have support from Solace and Minister Kimmins. And the report, it's the intention for the report to present a balanced overview of system performance, to shine a light on key successes and outcomes, identify areas for improvement, and demonstrate the broader value that effective planning and the planning profession brings to our communities, environment and economy. All councils have been asked to provide inputs to best reflect the key planning achievements and outcomes at our local level. It's not a lengthy document that they want from us, 300 to 400 words per example, and they want 3 examples. And they want that report by the end of September. So if members want to have a workshop to discuss the great work that Mid-Ulster has done, to agree the 3 projects that you want to put forward, we can do that, or otherwise myself and Melvin can sit down and have a discussion and bring a report back to you with options, but I'm happy to take your direction on that, members.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Sean McPeak.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Karen, for that report. And I suppose this is the direction of travel the department is going in recent times, looking at best practice and looking at how councils can learn from each other of what's happening and all that. Indeed, I reported just a couple of months ago, I've been at a meeting representing the planning committee here with the minister and 10 other representatives from each of the other councils, and this work is continuing, and they're looking at trying to improve and trying to look at best practice and see what works and so on. So I think it would be good to have even an online workshop, just to look. Even tonight, some of the earlier, the one that springs to mind to me is a wetlands park proposal. I have no doubt the like of that is going to transform Magherafelt. There's loads of proposals here that we've experienced in Mid-Ulster in recent years, and I think it's a matter of just looking at those and seeing what's the best and submitting that. So I'd happily propose that we do that workshop, Chair.
And I second. I think the workshops are very, very beneficial to our work moving forward. Councillor Dan Kerr, you were looking in.
Hi, Chair. No, I was just going to say a workshop would be beneficial. I was going to propose it, but you've probably proposed exactly, so no need it.
Thank you, Councillor. And that moves us on to matters for information. Item 8, minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 7th of July 2026. Councillor Kyle Black.
Sorry, Chair, I was looking in just on the previous item there. I was just looking clarification on something. So the department has asked for our input at a workshop to the system that they use and every other council use. Is that correct? But obviously we operate a different system. So I was just wondering how that interacted with the department, looking feedback and the learnings from the system that they have and every other council would be using, the fact that we use our own system. What does that mean with regards to feedback that we would give? That's all I was looking clarification on. Thank you.
That's a good point, Karen, if you'd like to come back on that.
It's not on the planning portal system itself. I mean, if you decide that's one example of what you think we have done exceptionally well in Ulster, we can certainly use it. But it's not the system itself, it's more projects that we have been involved in, like the Wetlands Park, public realm schemes, for example, Musa, all those different ones. You decide on the ones you think have been the most effective. That okay?
Thank you. So, item 8, minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 7th of July 2026. Any issues? No. Item 9, receive report on deferred applications caseload. Karen?
Yeah, members, it's only for information. Confidential business. You want to take this in confidential business? No, sorry. You happy to? Sorry. Members, do you want to? Okay, I'll give you a quick overview of this. It's really, we're reporting every quarter. I'm a month late this year and this quarter, and I apologise. So I'll catch up with myself. It's really just to feedback that provisional statistics up to the end of the third quarter of 25-26, the Northern Ireland wide average for local applications stood at 19.6 weeks, exceeding, as we know, the 15-week standard, which is an increase from the average processing time from the same period a year earlier by 0.4 weeks. This council's performance in the same period unfortunately stood at 22.7 weeks. We know that we have been trying to address the deferred caseload, and we've been working hard to do that on both fronts. So As of the 23rd of July, when I prepared this report, the planning department within the council are dealing with a total of 175 deferred planning applications. That, I'm pleased to report, is down from the height of 224 in November, when Colin was appointed to address, and is a reduction of 199 in April. But that doesn't really reflect the amount of applications deferred applications we've taken back to members. So it is a reduction of 22% from November 2025. Since the 1st of April, planning officers have presented before you members a total of 64 new planning applications. 20 of those have been deferred, which is 32%. In the same period, we've presented a total of 49 deferred applications, which have been previously deferred on at least one occasion, with 9 of those being deferred for at least a second time. Therefore, an overall total of 113 applications have been presented before the Planning Committee since the 1st of April 2026, with members deferring 29 of those, which works out at 26%. So although we've presented 49 deferred applications, we've only seen a reduction in that of 24. So it really is to try and keep a focus on reflecting on decisions that are being taken by the committee and officers reflecting on those decisions that are taken and the rationales for them, but also requesting that members consider applications at the planning committee to try and omit any more deferrals or a significant increase in deferrals. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10, receive report on RTPI politicians and planning event. Karen?
Yes, just to advise members that following the success of the event last year in the Burnavon, a few of you were at it. It was a great success and there was great feedback from it. It provides an opportunity for members to enhance their understanding of the planning system and explore how political leadership can positively influence planning outcomes for the local communities. So the recommendation is that any member who wishes to attend to indicate their interest at the planning email address provided in the report before the end of this month, if possible, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11, receive report on DFI update for LA 03 2021 0940F Loughney S54.
Yeah.
Karen, again.
Yes, that's a letter received from the Planning Policy and Casework team at the DFI. You'll have some awareness of the history of this, that we received a notice of opinion in August 2023 and we requested an opportunity to appear before and be heard by the Planning Appeals Commission, and we invited officials from the department to attend, but they declined our offer. They decided it wasn't necessary. In the intervening period, there have been exchanges of correspondence between DFI and the applicant and the Planning Appeals Commission. So on the 23rd of July, just past, the department wrote to us to advise us that they have withdrawn their request to the PAC for a hearing because the applicant has chosen to update their environmental information. So the department consider it appropriate in the interest of procedural consistency to withdraw the department's request for a hearing at this time. They say it's not anticipated that will result in any additional delay, and I've included a copy in the appendix. And it's really for members just to note the contents of the letter, and should we receive any further information in the future, we will report back before the members.
Thank you. And we'll move into confidential business.
Sorry, Chair, I want to comment on that last item.
Sorry, Councillor Kerr, I didn't see your hand up there. Go ahead.
No, just I fully appreciate that the application is still being decided, and it's just a note for an update. But obviously, the type of application, we've seen once again the negative impacts that the algae has had on Loughney. It's just a reminder for from the council to keep a watchful eye on for the department. Obviously, Lough Neagh is our largest source of drinking water. I know some MLAs are claiming expenses of water by public expenses, but we unfortunately other people aren't in the position to do that.
Sorry, Councillor
So
Kerr.
it is
Sorry.
important. So it is important that
Sorry, Councillor Kerr. I don't know the relevance of your point there to the Planning Committee.
well, I'm just making the relevance is that Lough Neagh is our largest source of drinking water, so it's important as a planning committee that we keep a watchful eye because, as I said previously, it's very important to the ratepayer that our largest resource of drinking water is kept safe, you know.
So the recommendation will provide further updates on the processing of the application by DFI when necessary. Okay, so we'll move on. We're out of open business and we're going to move into confidential business. We need a proposer. Proposed, Councillor Sean McPeak. Second, Councillor